Robert Fuller is a legendary actor, known for being an icon in Western television. From his lead role as Jess Harper in Laramie to his role on Wagon Train, he's solidified himself as a talented and shining presence on the small screen. Stick around as Factsverse presents Robert Fuller reveals the secrets of his career. Robert's early life. Robert Fuller was born July 29, 1933 in Troy, New York, though he was brought up in Key West, Florida. As a child, he was called Buddy Lee by his schoolmates at St. Mary's School in Troy, then at Miami Military Academy. His mother, Betty, had divorced his father and moved the two of them to Florida, but then she married a naval officer named Robert Simpson. Unfortunately for young Robert, they all moved to Chicago for a year, meaning it was hard for him to feel rooted in one place. This was furthered when they moved back to Florida a year later. Perhaps it was the lack of consistency and the difficulty of making friends, or perhaps school just wasn't a good fit for Robert, because he dropped out at age 15 after finishing his freshman year. After that, he worked odd jobs in the area. Robert was incredibly close to his stepfather, Robert Simpson, even taking his name as a youngster. Eventually, Betty managed to convince her husband to take his leave from the Navy and embrace his artistic side. Together, they created a dance studio in Key West. They would teach local children and even had many clients serving at the local naval base. The family moves to Hollywood. When Robert was 16, Betty and Robert Sr. decided on a move to Los Angeles. At that point, Robert Sr. had dreams of being a dancer in the movie business, a goal that ultimately came true for him. He ended up changing his last name to Cole and became a staple in Hollywood movie musicals. In fact, he appeared in nearly all of the musicals released on film from the 1950s to the late 80s. Young Robert even appeared in one, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, as a chorus line dancer. However, the younger Robert decided his passion was less in dancing and more in acting. This was furthered by taking a job at the famous Grauman's Chinese Theater. He began at the low end of the totem pole there, but was an assistant manager before too long. While there, he made friends with assorted actors in town, all of whom recommended he give the career a shot. He was particularly moved by their claims that by joining the Screen Actors Guild, he could make a lot more money than he was making at the theater. At this point, he decided to take on a stage name. The last name Fuller was somewhere in his lineage and seemed like a good fit. So he became Robert Fuller for the remainder of his acting career. Robert's early career. Robert started out the way many actors do, with work as a background actor. He appeared in the background of several films like Above and Beyond, Raintree County, and The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit, as well as The Harder They Fall. He also continued to find work as a dancer in movie musicals like I Love Melvin and Latin Lovers. But any momentum he was gaining in his early career was immediately stifled when he was drafted into the Army for the ongoing Korean War. He served for 2 years and was a decorated soldier. Upon his return, he made a formal decision to give up acting, but fortunately his stepdad and his friend Chuck Courtney talked him out of the decision. He agreed to go to a local acting school taught by Richard Boone. Boone saw potential in Robert and reached out to legendary acting coach Sanford Meisner on his behalf. Robert began studying in NYC with Meisner, where he honed his craft. He had his first speaking role in the movie Friendly Persuasion in 1956. Following that, he landed a bigger one in Teenage Thunder. And he landed the part of a villain in a sci-fi series called Outpost in Space. Then in 1959, he was cast in a series called Cimarron City, a Western. His big break. Robert's work on Cimarron City and a few other projects got him noticed in town. So much so, he was offered a part on an upcoming show called Laramie. At first, however, he was offered the role of Slim Sherman. But Robert had read the script and fallen in love with the role of Jess Harper. He said as much, but was told the part had been filled. So he said no to the role of Slim and left the office of the executive. But the next day, his agent informed him the studio had booted the other actor, and the part of Jess Harper was now his. Interestingly enough, the actor booted from the role was John Smith, who ended up getting the role of Slim instead. And as fans of Laramie can attest, it was ultimately the right casting for both actors. Laramie was a hit. Laramie aired from 1959 to 63. Set in the rugged town of Laramie, Wyoming, the show followed the lives of the Sherman brothers, Slim and Jess Harper, who ran a successful ranch while navigating various adventures and challenges in the Old West. Fuller's portrayal of Jess was one of the standout performances and helped solidify his status as a prominent Western actor. Jess Harper, a former gunfighter turned ranch hand, was a complex and multidimensional character. Fuller's ability to convey his depth and inner conflict, combined with his rugged good looks and charismatic presence, captivated audiences. His chemistry with John Smith was a highlight of the show. Together, they faced myriad challenges, including cattle rustlers, outlaws, and other dangers of the frontier, all while maintaining a strong sense of justice and integrity. Laramie stood out among other Western shows of its time due to its well-written scripts, compelling characters, and high production values. It featured a mix of drama, action, and moral dilemmas, appealing to a wide range of viewers. The Resurgence of Laramie. In a 2016 interview, Fuller gave insight into the reaction to Laramie being re-aired by the network Encore Westerns. For many people, it was the first time they'd been able to see it on TV, since it hadn't been in syndication in the years since it aired. Fuller talked about how the release of the show resulted in him receiving a ton of emails and social media messages. He said many of these were relaying to him how excited the senders were to finally be able to check out the show on TV. He also praised the show, saying, quote, "Laramie had a good message and was a good Western with good characters, direction, and camera work." He also talked about how the director of photography on Laramie was a man named Ray Renahan. Ray was an Oscar winner who had literally invented Technicolor technology. And he also talked about how they had the highest caliber directors like Joseph Kane and Leslie Salander. They were particularly knowledgeable about the Western genre and brought their expertise to Laramie. Fuller's Car and Dan Duryea. In his 2016 interview, Fuller told the story of some advice he was given by legendary actor Dan Duryea. He was a big fan of Dan and got a chance to work with him in some early episodes of Laramie. Not long after they met, they went to lunch together. Fuller was still a newcomer in Hollywood, while Dan was a longtime star. Fuller remembers that when they were seated at lunch on the lot at Universal Studios, Dan seemed to know all the waitresses by name and was courteous to all of them. This impressed Fuller, who noticed what a nice person he was and how he hadn't become jaded by years of success. Then Dan leaned in and gave him some personal advice. Fuller said Dan relayed an important message about saving money. Dan reminded him this was just his first series, and he might have visions of grandeur when it came to spending some of the money he was now getting. But Dan said he should resist the temptation. According to Fuller, Dan advised, quote, "Don't be like all these actors and run right out and buy a new car, okay?" Fuller agreed in the moment and promptly ignored the advice. He literally bought a brand new 1959 Thunderbird 3 days later and drove it onto the lot. He was proud of the fact that it was his first ever new car and he could actually afford to pay for it. And yet he was nervous for Dan to see it, given the advice he'd given Robert 3 days earlier. But Dan thought it was hilarious. Robert joked with Dan that he simply couldn't help himself. And Dan laughed and told him he couldn't blame him. It was, after all, a gorgeous car. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you prefer Laramie or Wagon Train? Who was your favorite character on both shows? Let us know in the comments section below.